Hello and welcome to Further Inside Chor Leoni. My name is Eric Light, Artistic Director of Chor Leoni Men's Choir, and I'm really excited to have this composer with me today. She's someone we got to know and I got to know through our C4 choral competition that Chor Leoni does annually. She's being performed by choirs all over the world, but has been such a hit here in Canada, and I just feel so glad to know her and to be able to work with her and perform her works and get to know a little bit more about her today. Would you please welcome MarieClaire Saindon? Hello, MarieClaire.
Hello, Eric.
How are you?
I'm doing quite well, all things considered.
That's always the proviso. Yep.
Yes.
I'm really glad to have you here. Your career and your music, I think are really taking off, and I think you're known pretty well here in Canada with a lot of the major choirs for sure. And I'm excited that we get to maybe show you off to a few of my friends south of the border and elsewhere with this little stint we have here today. So it's great. Tell us a little bit about your musical background. How have you come to landing where you are musically right now?
I think it's similar for a lot of people. It's very loopy. I started as a violinist. My mother was a singer-songwriter. I studied music ever since I was a kid. I was in a very artistic high school that helped a lot. So that's École Secondaire Publique de la Salle. Some of you may know Robert Filion, who is very active in the choral world and in Canada, I'm sure in the States too. And he was our vocal teacher there and our theory teacher and the choir teacher.
Can you tell us where there is? Where did this growing up happen?
Oh, sorry, that was in Ottawa. I'm part of the world. No, yes, but I'm in. I grew up in Ottawa, born and raised in Ottawa. Little bit of traveling because of military father, but we always came back to Ottawa and kind of stayed there after a while. So yeah, a lot of art around me, but I was never in all these choir and vocal things. I wanted to be a film composer, and I studied for it. I even did a master's in Université de Montréal for it. I did my bachelor's degree in composition at McGill, and then switched to Université de Montréal for a film degree. And I was just really trying hard to be part of the industry, but I did not understand that you had to be part of a community at the same time. So I was trying to do these gigs and these videos as I started off after my master's, and at the same time I was thinking, I want to be part of a community. I don't know a lot of people in Montreal. Let's join a choir. And that kind of just flopped my entire career plan.
Flopped.
Yeah, well, I don't really do film anymore.
Yeah.
Flipped would be the wrong. So I'm French, predominantly French. So sometimes I might say things that are like, oops, that's not the right thing. I will blame it on my, yes. Okay. So yeah, so I ended up
flopping. Yeah.
I'm not, no. Oh, okay. That's going to be the first of many. So I joined a choir, Concerto della Donne, with Ewan Edwards as the conductor, and that from then on, I just really discovered the choir world as a young adult, actually, late 20s, early 30s.
And was that like the first time you were really in choir? Or?
Yeah, I was part of a children's choir in my elementary school with Philippe Duquette, which was really good. But then I stopped after that. I joined band and I joined orchestras, youth orchestras, and things like that. And yeah, Della Donna was the first choir where you would learn everything by heart, about 60 pieces per year, kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, it was good, really good for me. Yeah.
And that, I would assume, changed your community life, your social life, all of those sorts of things. And as you're saying, it changed your career path.
Yeah.
Tell us how that pivot worked.
Originally, I got a piece published when I was in high school with Boozy and Hawks because of a choral competition that Robert Filion, our choral conductor at school, did. But I never thought of it as a launch pad for something. It was just there, which was awesome. And then as it finally got published and on the shelves, that was when I started being part of the choir. So I got these requests to do commissions, had no idea what it was doing. And by singing in the choir, I learned more about how to write for these commissions, and then what are the styles that are. There were so many more styles of choral music that I didn't know existed, obviously, and that kind of opened up my eyes to, oh, this is fun, I could do this, and I kind of just gradually focused artistically more there, and found I could develop my voice more, my artistic voice, as a choral composer, and also my singing voice, which needs a lot of help. But yes.
So, and your violin was the primary instrument for you?
Yeah, so I play the violin. I still do it. I play more. I'm looking up there because it's hanging on the wall. Easy access. But it's mostly traditional fiddling at the moment that I do.
Yeah, and I was kind of curious. So, and I assume a classical background was there, but then I know that you've also done fiddling. Tell us a little bit, because I think that both of those sides come into your work, even in the choral world here. So I'm interested in that. How did the fiddling versus the violining go?
The same thing is where I found the work. So for 6 or 7 summers straight, I fiddled in a historical steam train as an entertainer.
Like and you do.
Like you do. And I had so much fun. And the more I researched and learned all these tunes, the more I dug deep into that rep instead of the classical rep. Not that I don't like classical, and there's so much I love about all the different periods, but I found a community with whom to play, and that's just where things went from there. I tend to be more of a community-oriented person, if you haven't noticed by now.
Yeah. Well, it's been interesting. Since we started this show, I've had such a constellation of choral stars that I've talked to, and that idea of community, every single one of them, that word keeps coming up and coming out. And maybe it's because we're feeling the lack of it currently that we're emphasizing. But it's also interesting to me, and I think this is I know. Composers take a lot of different tracks. Some of them, it's about sitting alone and writing and finding the commissions and doing those sorts of things. But for a lot of them, it is about becoming part of an ensemble or creating your own ensembles and those sorts of things. It sounds like that latter has been a big thing for you, yes?
It was huge. And on top of that, when Ewan Edwards retired from Belladonna in 2014, a big chunk of the group didn't want to stop, so we finally incorporated the ensembles as something separate, so that Belladonna would always be Ewan's project. So we became Adlasia, and so I still sing in this group. I am now, I'd been in and out depending on what was happening personally with the projects, but currently I'm singing with them, and they are conducted by alumni of Belladonna, and they are fantastic. I love the 2 conductors. They're co-conductors, Amelia and Virginie. We'll see them later, I think, and in videos. And and I'm their composing residence. That's right.
Oh, fantastic. I want to also ask you a little bit about, I got to know you through a choral competition, which we talk about on the live stream a little bit more, the C4 competition. And I know that you've entered those as well as been commissioned by people. You've created been a part of ensembles, so you have that laboratory in which to try out your music and what you're writing. But tell us a little bit about that, that transition as far as like working towards getting commissions and or doing competitions, and a little bit of your background. Is there anything that you've learned through this, things you would do again, things you wouldn't do again, good experiences, bad experiences?
I would, well, had I known as a teenager when my piece got picked up by Boozy and Hawks, I would have just gone and joined a choir then during my university years and started then. I'm seeing so many other young choral composers in Canada that are the age I was at when I got my first piece published. I'm like, shoot, I feel like I missed multiple years, but at the same time I didn't, because I was learning other things that I'm now applying now. So it's not lost. It's just kind of like, should have thought of that. But right. So that's one thing I would have done differently, but I would definitely, so what I did, okay. So when I realized I wasn't really part of the film networking community just because I wasn't active in it. It makes complete sense. I decided to go and do a program in arts administration, which is always great. But my mind was set as I am quitting music. I am done. This was in 2014 and 15. And I had written something for Deladon in like 2010. It's a nice piece. Nice. Ewan hates the word nice. I love this piece. It's one of my babies. And that in 2016, Cyprus came out with their La Série Enchantée series. So it's a francophone series that is curated by Laurier Fagnan, I believe. And so somebody sent me the link and said, hey, send your 3 Méditations de la Vierge Marie that you wrote in 2010. We love that suite. And that was somebody from Del Donna, obviously. It was actually the conductor from one of the 2 conductors of Iglesia. So I dared, and then I got the piece published. So that was my second piece published, but about 10 years later almost. And I was like, wait, I'm learning all these networking things and all these things in my arts management. Here's a blip in my name getting out. I need to ride this wave. And that's what I did. So when it got published, I made sure that I became Iglesia's composer in residence at that moment. And then that's when I started entering a bunch of competitions, just seeing. And yeah.
And how have you found the competition world? There are a lot of them out there, and they're all run a little. They all have their own quirks, I think, as far as how they are structured. As far as maybe somebody who's coming up as a composer, or people on my end who are running these sorts of things. What are the good experiences? And what are the challenging ones in terms of the competitions?
For myself, I've applied to quite a few in 2018, and then just a couple after that. I had a lucky streak in 2018, and I haven't won any since. It's not that I haven't applied for any; it's that I haven't won any since. So I know that for some colleagues, what is really difficult is having to pay to get in. Sometimes it excludes some composers that wouldn't necessarily be able to afford it. It kind of puts a paywall, as we like to call it. And competitions that ask for physical score copies, that's expensive to print too, and then to mail it, that could come to a really expensive thing for some young musicians that potentially are excellent musicians, but that makes it or breaks it for them, that entry point. So I know that's difficult. I'm lucky. For me, it wasn't a problem. So I managed to enter, and I think most of the competitions I've entered were free or like $25. So that wasn't bad
at all. Free with PDFs, yeah.
Yeah, free with PDFs. That's right. We love those. Those are great. So that worked fantastically. As far as the format, it's really fun when you win a competition and you are then brought into the rehearsal process. So if the conductor then keeps communicating with you and saying, hey, so sure, you won this piece, we're going to perform it now. However, there's some things that could be even better for the performance. Are you willing and open to learn more? I personally love it. I don't mind having a conductor taking a piece of mine in any situation and saying, you know what, this is really weird. It's not really comfortable for a vocal range. It's a weird speed. You can't spit out the words. I tend to write fast stuff sometimes. So it's I really like that back and forth. So in some competitions that was present, in others no. So
right. Yeah, and just to talk a little bit about how you and I have connected through our C4 competition. You were part of it when we did it, what we're calling kind of our old way, which was we did it. It was free, but people had to write pieces for male choir and submit them. I chose 3 people. Then we'd bring you out to Vancouver. We'd have that time for some rehearsal, and then then present the piece and have you be able to talk to the audience, et cetera, et cetera. But I was finding that that window of that collaborative time that you're talking about between choir, conductor, and composer was just so itty bitty, and we did good stuff inside of that, but I found that a little bit frustrating. So now we've pivoted that the whole competition to people just submitting works that they have done, and out of those, I'm choosing 3 people, and then we actually go through the act of commissioning, because that's where the rubber meets the road, and where you find out, sort of like you're talking about with your ensembles that you work with, you begin to create community through that through that process, and yeah, it's better. And what I'm super excited about is, like, we already have a thing, at least one commission in the works, and in that short amount of time, I knew that you were somebody that I wanted to work with. When you actually, this leads to my next question, is when you get like a sort of a regular commission outside from a competition, how do you what about that process, or what would your ideal process be in terms of working with the ensemble and the composer, deciding texts, et cetera, figuring out what that project wants to be?
Again, depends on the group, but and the composer too. Different composers like different things.
Yeah, just for your.
For myself, I really love being able to choose the text myself, and I've been really fortunate that everyone with whom I've worked up till now has allowed me to do that. I've just spoken with somebody last week or 2 weeks ago where they said, "I'm sorry, we don't have a text for you yet," and I just said, "Look, I actually have a stack of texts that I want to work with. I will send you my favorite, and you pick one out of that." And we were actually on the same page as to which one worked. So that's fun. And even then, I like that, because then I can confirm that the conductor really enjoys the text I've chosen compared to other texts that were also similarly appropriate for the theme they were asking for. So what I like to know the theme of the concert in which it's going to be performed. If there's no theme for the concert, in which case, are you looking for something energetic? Are you looking for something meditative? Like, give me a mood to work with. I think this is when the film composer training kicks in.
What's the scene? What's the scene?
The scene? Yeah, give me a scene, and then I'll write through it. I always do that. And then once that is done, of course, I need the deadlines. I need to know when you're performing it, but then I need to know when you'd like to start rehearsing it, in which case I would like to know a deadline before then, so we can have a little bit of leeway just in case. Yeah, I need, like, the tightest deadlines I've written pieces are within 2 weeks, but I'd rather not. That's really, really tight, and I have to drop.
That's film composing world there, yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's really, and that's another reason I kind of quit film too. It's just now my favorite. I like to have a life too, and eat at normal times and sleep at normal times. Sure. So if you really, really need to, I can pop something out in 2 weeks for you guys, but I can't guarantee that those 2 weeks are already free. So plan in advance, and then I love being able to send the score in and have this back and forth once the ensemble starts the rehearsal. I know sometimes it's hard for a conductor to just see the piece and say, okay, generally I can see that the ranges are okay, the text is, we already picked it, it's great, I can see that it's a tempo, looks great. Once you start working with your ensemble, you conductors do your conducting magic and score study and all that stuff. Then I like doing the back and forth of, so anything you want to change, anything that feels weird. I completely want conductors to know that I really respect what you guys do, and I actually expect to learn from each commission. So there's always going to be something that I need to learn that I will. If you think, okay, I've had some conductors say things like, but I want to respect the will of the composer. I am not flawless. I need to know if there is a part in my piece that's kind of weird for your ensemble. Tell me, and then I'll see if I can change it so that it fits better with your group. I really, really want that. So
that is, and I think this is just so good. That this is, I've done a lot of commissioning in my time, and this is the beauty of all of it. Because even if I'm having a piece written for one male choir versus another male choir, there's going to be idiosyncrasies between those two groups, even though they're technically the same. That I'm like, oh, I see what gesture you're going for. Could we try this, or just eliminate that, and it'll be clearer with this number of voice? Just those sorts of things of just trying to figure out what it's going to be. And so many, I know a lot of, especially people who are new new to commissioning, they think that they've found a Mozart manuscript,
Yeah.
when the composer sends that first draft to them, and
Mhm.
these dots and lines are inviolate. That to me at least is not interesting, and it's so much more fun to just roll up your sleeves and get your hands dirty together,
Yeah.
and of course always being communicative and respectful. But yeah, all the best composers that that at least that I've worked with are that, and you certainly are that, and it's no wonder that your music is really getting out there, and you're being in demand. And I can't say enough, like, you're somebody that you want to have around in that process. Like, you're fun and you work hard and you do all that sort of stuff. So, aw shucks, right? Yeah. So,
Yeah. Well, thank you. So
I have
honestly,
one.
yeah.
Yeah, I have one other question for you, and it's one it's sort of based on something that I'm kind of struggling with at the moment. The IRL part of the world, the in real life thing, is not happening for most of us in the musical world, and we've had to move things to virtual. Phil, and aside from that, though, many composers, I think, have to maintain a social media presence, a website, a YouTube channel, whatever that ends up being. I'm just curious as to how deeply have you felt that the need to keep yourself out there in a digital way? What ways are important to you, and maybe just what's your take on a composer's digital existence?
Well, seeing that it's already a very isolating career, you do end up sitting down alone in your office, wherever that may be, for quite a long time. And then it's only at the concerts and sometimes rehearsals you get to see other people in your community, in your career path and everything. So keeping up to date with other choirs that are either interested in your music or that you're interested in how they perform. So may that be by Facebook, by Instagram, by YouTube. I'm not a very good adept at Twitter, but for some people, Twitter is also great. And yeah, I mean, I go and listen to a lot of choirs on YouTube. I follow a lot of choirs on Instagram and on Facebook. So I find it just to know what's going on. As far as to advertising for myself, I'm still learning how to do that. I'm actually more excited about doing it for others. So if there's a different project, like our choir did an album last year. It was kind of for me, but mostly for them. Just because some of my music was on it, so it was me, but it wasn't really me. I could hide behind the choir mask.
I understand.
And I had so much fun, like doing a communication plan, doing all kinds of things like that. So I know I can do it. Do I have the patience to do it for myself? I think I need to learn, honestly. Just because the more active choirs and composers that I follow on Facebook, and the more interactive they are, where they leave open-ended questions and actually reach out, the more I'm interested in being in interacting with them and then following their work and checking them out.
It's I think that's a very healthy perspective, and I'm glad I heard you say that, because it's the sort of thing that I need to hear for myself too. I think it is a definitely different animal to promote just you versus your choir, or even the projects that it's a very deeply personal thing.
It's hard.
That's your music. It's your music. So I'm really excied that at least then you can hide behind us today and and promote yourself while doing this, because I think you have just an extraordinary voice, and I'm just so happy to know you, and really just so pleased as to all the beautiful things that you've been putting out into the world.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for asking. And it's always a pleasure to talk with you. So
it is just always fun. I want to thank you so much for being a part of this show. We are going to play at the end of this the video for Light. And so
fantastic.
Could you give us maybe a bit of a setup on this piece before folks hear it?
So Light is the first out of is the first competition piece that I wrote in the 2018 competition streak that I that I wrote for, and that one it was for Choirs Ontario was heading that, and it was for the Ruth Watson Henderson choral composing competition, and originally I started writing this piece for SATB. I can't remember what for. I think it was for the Choirs Canada for a podium. Uh-huh. And then my mother passed away that same year, so I kind of dropped a few projects, and that was one of them. And thankfully, I hadn't written too much of the piece yet. That when the Choirs Ontario competition came up, they said it was for children's choir, SSA. It was going to be for the Toronto Children's Chorus, and I thought, okay, well, can this piece be changed? And it could. Right. So I did it SSA. I added a piano score to that, which I've never done before because I'm not a pianist. I'm really not a pianist, but I'm married to one. So someone had
to have that in your back pocket. Yeah.
So I wrote something I thought sounded great, and then I gave it to him, and he just kind of said, "Great musical ideas. Now let's make it playable." Okay. And to this day, he still helps me a lot as far as to make things more playable, though I'm starting to get a little more idiosyncrasies properly.
Tell us a little bit about the text, or
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm just talking about the process. So the text is Light. It's from Rabindranath Tagore. I'm always switching 2 letters in his first name. He is Tagore. Oh, Tagore, and he's I've never heard that name spoken out loud, Tagore. Okay. And he is a poet from India. He did write both in English and in his language, which is...
Oh, now you've really put me on the spot.
Sorry.
I didn't know this, but that's okay. It's okay. Anyway, it's in English, the one you're doing.
It is an English one, so it's the original text. It is not a translation. And it's just a happy, joyous thing talking about light, and he's talking to someone. He's always calling this person my darling. It could be a child, it could be a partner, it could be a loved one.
God.
It could be God. In his case, actually, it really could be too. Yeah. He's really well known to write about anything sacred and light and things like this. So it's just describe it. It's just this joyful explosion of love and light, basically.
Well, you've been a joyful explosion of love and delight. So thank you so much, MarieClaire, and please enjoy Light.